Welcome to Healthy Conversations, sharing the knowledge, experience, stories, and the wisdom of herbalists and other natural healers, with your host, Stephen Horn. Today's guest, Denny Johnson. Hi, welcome once again to Healthy Conversations, and I am joining me again, Denny Johnson, who developed the Rayid model and has worked a lot with understanding how to recognize personality patterns in the eye, but more importantly, about how our family tree affects us. But today, I wanted to have a conversation with Denny. I've been wanting to have this for a long time, and we're going to invite you to eavesdrop on it. But when I went and heard Denny speak in St. George, Utah, many years ago, he told a story about how he got into this, and I know he had an experience where he felt the divine love that just poured into him. And I've had that same experience of feeling God's love flow into me. And I really related to him trying to struggle to explain that because it's difficult to explain because it's unlike human love. And so what I want to talk about is developing or allowing ourselves to become clear conduits for that love to go out in the world, because I think you and I both believe that that's not a love that we just generate from inside of ourselves. It's a love that we have to receive and remove the things that are blocking us from letting it flow into us. So take it away, Denny, and we'll just start the conversation, okay?
You want me to start with my experience or?
Well, as much of it as you feel like you want to share right now.
Let me just say that my first experience of this nature, and I've had about 4 significant ones, but the first one was in 1978. And I have in recent years, particularly in the last year or two, become more realized about why it's important to share these experiences, even though they're not common for many people, because it's personal to me. It's who I am. It's what I went through. And you have your own. You've gone through some. And it leads us to want to serve more, to do more. And it's part of the motivational experience that guides my life 45 years later. And the result is now, the more I practice, the less I feel capable of doing it. Because I feel like my sensitivity keeps revealing things about my inner nature, being, my heart, my mind, my soul, that need more and more cleansing or more change, more realization, more divine love. And I have from the near the beginning. In the beginning I didn't, but after the beginning I realized that the only place I want to be led by is not my own body, not my own mind. It's not even my own soul. I want God's love to guide my experience, and that requires some degree of the willingness to examine everything that's in the way, known or unknown, and 99% of them are not known. They're hidden throughout my family tree, my genetic code, my personality, my body tissue, scar tissue, pericardium, brain. They're there, and each day I need to keep cleaning it. So in that light, I'm going to ask for divine assistance in being able to share this experience, and ask that those who are listening just relax enough to allow it to happen and realize that no form of explanation can fully convey what happened, but it is available for you to feel if you want to. So my original experience was that I was in a soul-searching part of my life in my late 20s, and I went for a walk, backpacking alone, and far away from people, which was my tendency at times, was to go as far away from people as possible, because they're not easy. I struggle with how people are sometimes, and I'm slowly becoming less cynical or judgmental, but I have a long ways to go. I walked into a small mountain valley that was no more than about 100 yards in length. At about the 2/3 of the way there, and later on, the positions and symbols of all of this become more recognized for me later. I'm still realizing everything that happened in a divinely perfect order.
Mm-hmm.
I looked down there at the end of near the end of this valley, and there was a tree that was maybe 9 to 10 feet tall. It was a deciduous looking tree in this mountain valley, and there was a sparkling bright light about 1/3 up the way on the right side. And I thought to myself, wow, what is that? It looked like something sparkling very, very brightly. Like at first thought was, oh, maybe it's a weather balloon or something because it was so metallically looking bright. I walked toward it and walked toward it, and I realized that the bottom branches of that tree were on fire. And I was shocked to consider that there was a fire burning on the side and bottom of that tree. And I was stunned, and I walked closer and closer. And as I did, this fire actually began to grow from the size of your fist to the size of your head, and very slowly grew. And as it did, it started to reveal things literally like a veil burning away. And in the process of it burning away, I realized that I could see inside that many, many times clearer than my human vision. I could see many things. Inside of it, I could see a single horizontal line of a golden thread of living, joyful, celebrating fire. I mean, a thread of fire connecting every single thing there was in that valley. Every blade of grass, every leaf, rock, every tree was all connected by this indescribable, living, joyfully celebrating, dancing fire. And it made a particular music, the likes of which the human ear has never heard. And it was now still burning off. And as it burned off, the light became brighter and brighter until eventually this force consumed this tree and revealed, in this process, revealed a spirit being of like a violet purple being standing behind the tree. I'd never seen any spirit associated with a living plant or a tree before, but it was quite profound. In this moment, it just kept getting broader and broader, and the light itself just kept getting more and more beautiful. And the entire valley was now enveloped in this fire, and all of it had lifted, and all around me in 360 degrees was a profoundly beautiful miracle of how everything is connected to everything through the presence of this divine fire light. And in that moment, the light then began to burn off into the sky. And as it burned the veil of the first cusp of the sky, it literally burned off a veil all around me on the top of my head. And it began to reveal what was behind the experience of the sky. And what there was a 360 degrees, for as far as I could see, there were angelic beings, and they were all individual sizes. Some of them were huge, some of them tiny, and they were all there, and they were all looking down, and they suddenly shouted with one combined voice, the sound of which was gleeful yet thunderous. And they said these words: "One has returned to the Father." And I'm not worthy of this. And I fell to my knees, and a voice penetrated me and loudly said, "This is grace." And in that moment, I start to sob, but I need to reflectively cover my eyes because the light around me is brighter than my eye would consider. And I put my hands over my eyes, and there came a ball of light right in the middle of my brain that was 10,000 times brighter at least than the sun. And I literally looked right into, for me, what was the face of God. And it was very much like, well, Jacob and the ladder and wanting to see the face of God, which is all part of what I always wanted to be. And in that moment, the moment I realized I had no eyelids, I had no way of, anyway, I exploded. In the moment of that explosion, I became aware of the exact position and the number of every star in the universe, and became simultaneously, instantly aware of every ray of light that has ever left that specific star and where it was at that moment. In the middle of all of that simultaneous experience, every question ever thought of or conceived by any mind or being from the beginning of time to the end of time was all simultaneously answered. And the only thing that remained at the end of that was silence, questionless, pure silence. And I realized my feeling at that time, that is one day what happens with me. In that moment, I start to open my eyes, look around, and there came over my right shoulder an orb of pure love. I cannot call it God. It was some angelic being. And the love that came through this angelic being was so intensely strong, it literally shined through the molecules of my bones, but particularly in my spine. And they woke up with a sudden glee of elation of being loved so deeply and so dearly. And this angelic presence said these words: God has purpose. It was all gone. And I felt, I always use this metaphor, I felt like Mr. Magoo in the bottom of a Coke bottle glass, because I felt completely blind. I couldn't see the light. I couldn't hear the music. And every one of those questions that were answered all came thunderously crashing back into thousands of other pieces of, silly questions about, I felt so terribly lost. And I screamed at the top of my lungs, please don't leave me here. They
Yeah.
left me
Well,
there.
yeah. Well, before we go on to part two of that, my experiences haven't been as dramatic as yours, but one of the experiences I had was I had a vision, and it was the way I explain it is it's like a dream, except you're wide awake, and it feels more real than this existence. I mean, it's not like, dreams are kind of fuzzy and you sometimes have trouble remember the details. I mean, it's like so crystal clear that it's hard to forget, right? And I was crying because I was experiencing this pain of always having felt like I was never good enough. Couldn't measure up to what my parents expected me, couldn't measure up to what my church expected of me, couldn't measure up to what everything. And I had this vision, and I saw Jesus standing next to this beautiful tree. And he said, "Why are you weeping?" I said, "Because I'll never be good enough to be loved." And he said, "Whoever gave you a stupid idea like that? Don't you know that I love you?" And I was immediately awash from head to toe in this most amazing love. Like I've never felt anything like it in my human experience. It was just this complete acceptance, love you just the way you are. You don't need to be anything different, than what you are. And then he said, "And don't you know that I know everything about you?" And at that moment, it was like a scroll rolled down, and all the stuff I berated myself for, all the things I saw were faults, weaknesses, blah, 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 came rolling before my eyes, and I cringed. And he says, "And don't you know I still love you?" And there it was. The love was there, in spite of all that. And he said, "Are you trying to be better than me or something?" It was like a sparkle. It was like a sense of humor, like he was teasing me. He said, "No, seriously," he said, "the only reason why people commit sin, as it is called, is because they're cut off from this love, and they're lost, they're alone, they're hurting, and they're afraid. And they're acting out of their pain, they're acting out of their fear, they're acting out of their suffering. And you can't cure darkness with darkness. You can only cure darkness with light. And the light that cures the darkness in the human soul is this love that you are feeling right now. So I have an assignment for you. I want you to go and lead people to this love so I can heal them. Well, and this gets into the second part of the conversation here. Well, when I started, I had already started working with people on trying to help them with their emotional stuff. So I had this thing. How do I do that? Because you can't you can't just tell someone about it. The words can't convey. You know, to just say, "Oh, you're loved unconditionally." That's not the same as actually experiencing something and not knowing it as just a mental idea. So the only thing I could figure out was when I was working with someone was to just try to set myself aside and say, God, love this person through me. Let me be the conduit that you can shine your love through to them. And what would be amazing is when I would do that, I would then re experience that love flowing towards that person. And it would heal me and help heal them at the same time. And I found that, like you did, that I had to keep clearing my own stuff that gets in the way of me being a conduit for that love. Because you think, okay, look, like you think, oh, I'm doing pretty good, and then I got married again about 7 years ago, and suddenly you've got stepkids, and including some that have some really interesting personality stuff, and the stuff with your wife, and suddenly you realize, no, I'm not as loving and patient as I thought I was, right? So life is presenting you with these things that are showing you have work to do, right? And that's the way I view life for me right now. It's always showing me, see, there's still stuff you need to clear because there's still stuff that upsets me. There's still stuff that takes me away from that feeling of love and pulls me back into whatever crap is going on in the world. And there are a lot of people who are very good at doing that. And, I see my job as trying to tune back in and say, okay, so one of the things I've learned to do is I've learned to pray and say, God, you see everybody clearly and you love them all. Help me stop seeing them through my eyes and start seeing them through yours. So there I've shared a little of my experience. Now we'll go back to yours.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that story you have. It's nice to feel and be reminded of that last little prayer that you're asking to help me see them through your eyes. I'm making one like that every day, and it requires that you keep cleaning your bias.
Yeah, you do.
So after that experience, completely changed my life. I quit my job. I used to drive a white 911 Porsche and blow a lot of money and be very material about what I planned to do for my future. Instead, I completely quit and got a little one-room apartment in Southern California, and I started begging and meditating for 10 hours a day, thereabouts. I would lay still and beg God to take me back to that place. And I started fasting. First it was a week, and then eventually it was 2, and then 3, and then 4. I would eat a week or so and then start fasting again. I think it was really more of a death wish in some way, that I felt that the only way to qualify for that was to purify myself of all my indulgences and so on. Each time I would meditate, there would come sometimes a single iris that did not have a sclera, but it would be different each time. It was an eye just right in the middle of my head and quite clear, and I'm kind of going, get out of here. I don't want any mental oriented illusions. I want to see the face of God, not some human iris. And I used to swat it away almost like a mosquito because it meant little or nothing to me. And after this was about 4 months along in doing this, a beautiful voice spoke directly through my heart without hesitation of its source or the motive of it. And it said simply, if you really want to know me, know my children. If you really want to love me, love my children. And I knew instantly what it meant, that this I thing I'm showing you is a gift I'm going to give you. And this is how you're going to get closer to me, is you're going to go out in the world. Didn't say this, but this is my interpretation. You need to go be with them. And here's how you're going to do it. You're going to use the I, and you're going to look in their eyes, and you're going to know them more, and hopefully you're going to love them more, and they're all going to, no, I can't do that. Give me anything else. Give me trees. Give me trout. I'm really good at trout. Give me anything else but that. And I mean, okay, no, I can't do it. And the eye kept coming back, and the eye kept coming back, and the eye kept coming back. Well, another 2 or 3 months went by, and this time the voice spoke through my chest, the force of powerful thunder. And it very firmly said these words: if you really want to know me, know my children. If you really want to love me, love my children. And I just said, okay, I'll do it. Just show me. I don't know. Show me. And a waterfall of irises came. A Niagara fall of irises came. And then with them came social emotional situations, a mother and a child and a brother and a sister and a wife and a friend, and people just came, and I couldn't grasp it, but it kept coming back. I cannot express or retain 0.1% of what it showed me, but I know somewhere in a divine level it is available. So my only way of learning the iris was to get a little light. You've seen the little magnifying light.
Right.
At first, I wouldn't do that. I started looking at people and asked them to go to somebody I knew that had a camera, and they would bring me their pictures. That would be nice. And then they said, well, you must be an iridologist. And I go, well, what's that?
Right.
I had no idea that there was an iris study type person who's an ist. And I go, what? And he's, yeah, go down to this was in Santa Barbara at the time. Go down to the health food store. There's this big blue book there, The Science and Practice of Iridology. And so I went down there, thought I was going to be terribly disappointed that it was everything I thought I was going to be able to offer was already done. And I pulled this book and I looked at it, and I almost threw it down, and I almost vomited, because it was not about the celestial beauty of every person's soul. There was nothing in this book at all about the soul and its relationship to God. And I like, wow, this is like, how can you ever look at a person in the eyes and tell them all these things about how dirty or infected or drugs or parasite droppings or all the things that, pardon me, I then became more in violation because I was disgusted at iridologists. Anybody that would do this to this wonderful tool. I have a horrible problem of judging too much too often, other people, myself. I still do it. It's a knee-jerk reaction, but I'm trying to get better. Give me patience. Every time I looked in an eye, I would see some little areas I didn't know, and I would beg and pray, God, you promised that if I asked, you would show me. I used to be a rebellious and demanding, insistent, passionate, zealot, angry guy, and you promised, give it to me like now, right? It never came like that, but within a matter of days, there would be 3 or 4 people in a row who had exactly that position. And they would tell me what their story was. And I realized after a while, the prayer was actually leading people to me to teach me their emotional structure, their habits, their personality that was related to their mother or their father or their kids or their grandparents. Slowly, I began to diagram those positions in the iris. How I still do it now, because I still look at the iris as a sacred cathedral to look at one single quality of a divine being God has produced that's not like any other. So for me, every single soul had a divine gift given by God, and that if I would look and see and feel that person, then something inside of me could also gain from the benefit of caring about that person and learn what God has given them. And that's where I began to do more of the work. Along the way, about every decade or so, or every 8 years or something like that, another experience would come. The birth order, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
then the family tree and cycle seasons and a whole series of things, decade after decade, would come. It's only been in the last year that I've begun to see how they all fit, that I was being led like some rebellious donkey through through these sequences of blessings that I had no idea was just divine miracles being delivered by the presence of love. And then I learned one of the harder ones. The very first lesson was the elasticity of my capacity to receive God's love depends on the number of people I actually love. And I can't say it's my family members because they're my blood. I can't only say it's the people I like. I can't only say it's people I'm attracted to. And now I realize that the elasticity of the capacity to receive divine love is literally based on the number of people that I choose and ask you, Steve. One day, let's learn to be friends. And maybe in a few more years, we can learn to like and then love, appreciate each other's distinction, and offer the social emotional experiences that you've gained from life so that we can join them together in some loving way to offer a larger gift to humanity.
Well, that's the purpose of this conversation. Like I said, I wanted to have this with you. I wanted to let people eavesdrop on it because I was introduced to that kind of iridology that you threw down as disgusting. And when I first tried to read eyes, I tried to read my mom and dad's eyes just for practice. And I just had the book in front of me and I was looking at it. Almost everything 100% matched with the kinds of health problems they had in my life. In fact, my dad said, I think you've identified every health problem I've ever had in my life. But then I would look in the eyes of young children that were perfectly healthy and they had a lot of the same markings and they didn't have any health problems at all. So I'm sitting here thinking, what the heck is going on here? This doesn't make sense.
Yes.
So in 1986, when I went to that first iridology conference where you spoke and Bill Cardona and Harry Wolf spoke about that the iris was constitutional, that it was genetic, that it was some pattern that you were born in. And this dot connected my mind because I realized that the physical is related to the spiritual, and therefore, because there's this idea in traditional medicine that different types of constitutions are prone to different kinds of health problems. And so there's some connection between our personality and the kind of problems that we're prone to. And that's been something that, has guided me ever since. Like yesterday, I just had someone come. I don't do in-person consultations too much because I don't have a lot of local clientele. But she came and I read her eyes and we talked about her life pattern and her personality and the way she interacted with the world. And she was just like, and I was able to actually not only give her a few suggestions of things to do physically, but also I gave her a flower essence to help her emotionally because she has a problem with being too hard on herself, being too judgmental on herself, and not allowing herself to shine. So what you did is opened a big door for me to be able to figure out how to really help people, and it also changed another thing. All irises are beautiful. Before that other form of iridology was like some irises are healthy and some irises are not healthy. Now I see all irises as this person has a set of gifts. And I don't know if you've ever read Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay on compensation, but in it he talks about our strengths grow out of our weaknesses. In fact, you can't have a strength without having a corresponding weakness. A gift in one area means a liability in another area. So he said, every liability has a hidden gift and every gift has a hidden liability. And so I see all of this as a potential that you can use either to let it be useful in the way that it's supposed to, or let it be harmful because you are unconsciously dealing with it and not consciously aware of what's going on inside of yourself. That's my 2 cents thrown in with that. And again, I really appreciate what you've done because your work has really helped me in my efforts to help other people.
Well, you give me, in my opinion, too many accolades. And I say that because the beauty that we have yet to experience and the joy, the celebration of the giving and receiving, from my comprehension of what comes, is so vastly beyond this. However, there does seem to be some very sacred things that are in place with God's design. And one of those is that God does not impose our destiny upon us. There is an element of choice, a
Mm-hmm.
sacred quality of me learning to want to engage my free will, my choices, and live a life guided by the divine and not from other directions or other sources. I made many mistakes in the beginning, and one of them was in the very beginning is I wanted nothing to do with the mind, nothing to do with those silly things called emotions, and certainly nothing to do with that trashy thing called the body. And I wanted nothing to do with relationships because they were some of the worst problems of all, because everything came together and caused problems in relationships. I only wanted a relationship to God, right? So I got several reminders about if you want to do that, many reminders about if you're going to do that, I have to learn to use my mind. I have to learn to express and feel my feelings. Relationships have a purpose. Yes, I get that one. I'm still trying to get that one. And then now my latest in the last couple of years is bringing more and more attention down into my molecular constitution that was created by a divine sequence. And so I'm bringing as much thought, feeling, prayer, relationship, direction, and faith down into my body as clearly and deeply as I can. And the result of that is like opening up different closets filled with the bats of ancestral history. The more.
Well, like I said in the conversation we had before this, I went the opposite direction. I started trying to learn about how to heal the body, and that led me to get into working with emotions because I found out that emotions affected the physical body. And then I started to realize that much of our emotions was tied in with our relationships, and therefore I had to help people have better relationships. And a lot of that was tied back into what they thought and what they understood. So I was going the reverse direction as you in terms of trying to go uh, up with one thing leading to another thing on top of
Yeah.
that.
And in reality, it does,
Yeah.
because there are remarkable things about the body, and that we can actually provide molecules to equilibrate the charges of the yin yang, if you want, acid alkaline, if you want, that can help in a compassionate way to help reduce or eliminate physical suffering and pain for those around us, to give them the opportunity to become more aware of and responsible for what's causing the suffering. For me, all human suffering is self imposed, meaning that we are composited by the ancestral dross of thousands of years of epigenetic genome, the Eve theory of the mitochondrial relationship of energy in the body going back, some say it's 200, some say it's 450,000 years, that the energy field in the body, the energy composite through the mitochondria, has a very specific thing about needing a molecule of two, and it has to separate and go through the cell wall and the red blood cell and into the whole Krebs cycle, and all that needs to come out the other side is water and waste and so on, carbon dioxide. All of that needs to happen until one day we learn it's possible to help each other so much that eventually in the spirit world, we have no body that needs polarity based experiences. We have a body who has a new respiratory system, except that it's not inhale, exhale anymore. It's based on just my experience so far of observing it, is the degree of love, is the respiration system. And so, how many people do you have in your respiration system? Is it just a handful, or is it 10? Is it more than that? Or how far away, how big is your capacity to breathe and feel love for other human beings that you've never met on the other side of the world, have a different culture, different race, different economic status, different belief systems. How do you do that in a community of people around you where across the street there's 3 or 4 different religions down the street and a few atheists on the other side, and some of them kick balls and others kick dogs, and they're scratching and yelling. And then we just went through this thing with us versus them, us
Yeah,
versus.
exactly. Well, and it's still going on. It hasn't been settled.
Yeah,
It's still
no,
us versus them. It's
it's
still, this polarization. And that's one of the things that God revealed to me about what healing is that on a physical level, health occurs when all of the different tissues and organs of the body are working harmoniously together. When any one system of the body is struggling, it affects the entire system of the body. Okay? And in the same way, God has shown me that humanity is like a single organism. Like we're all cells in something bigger. Okay? And so we all need each other. We're all performing different functions within that system. And what holds it together is harmony and love. And the more we lose harmony and love and the more disharmonious, it's like unhealthy. Healing is to restore the harmony and love back to the connection. So whether we're working on our own body and taking care of, because my liver is stressed or my kidneys are stressed, or on a higher level, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and what I'm doing is all out of sync because I've got stuff inside of me that's blocking me from having a harmonious internal working with the mental, emotional, spiritual, kind of part of myself. Or whether it's me dealing with you. Healing is always to bring things back to a harmonic relationship where we're not in conflict. And that's the problem in the entire world that we're dealing with that makes it so difficult. Because honestly, what I experience is if I try to be kind, understanding to both sides, I become the enemy of both sides, right?
for me. There's maybe for the first time in my life, in the last few months, particularly maybe the last year, but stronger in the last few months, I've become an optimist.
Uh-huh.
Some of my friends, when you want to know what's gotten into me, because
I do.
I'm almost elated by what I feel is arriving to us and our opportunity to prepare our vessels to be able to receive and grow and share, have compassion, have an understanding of each one of the elements of what we need to learn. And along the way, I've gotten some treasures, and I'd like to share one of those and explain it with greater detail than I have before. I'd like to share with you what I do when I notice myself having a what I would call a triggered moment of reaction to something, whether it's social dynamics in the house, or it's public, or it's on the media, or it's even in a movie, or it's in politics. If I find myself dealing with and struggling, I bring my fingertips and I move it back toward my thymus. And on the way in, I ask, and I try to use my sweeter voice now than I used to in the past, please show me the truth about this feeling I'm having right now, and every feeling like this I've ever denied, knowing that the sincere desire to want to know the truth has an intended outcome of wanting to receive and know God better. So show me the truth about this. And there are some very interesting things about it. If it's a small moment of you just feeling maybe triggered by a movie or something that you watched, or somebody's doing something and you're triggered, you have at least 4 hours to go back to that event because it's still moving. It's moving between you and the more subtle body, the astral or the etheric or the higher or whatever it is. We have layers of this around us, and like sloshing feelings in a bathtub, it's moving. If you have a strong one, a real difficulty with your mate or significant person or parent or child, and it's really emotional, You have 4 days. And you may say that you noticed that you reacted and you blamed or you self attacked or you excused or justified or minimized and did all of this. Everything that's coming at me is divinely inspired to arrive in exactly this moment of this month, in this week, in this hour. And it knows exactly which emotion to trigger. And in that moment of triggering, I'm bringing together the father's family and the mother's family because the medicine on one side is on the other side. So if you bring both sides of the family together in that moment, just on the fingertips, and you know that you're honoring your father's family and your mother's family, and you're asking, show me the truth about this feeling and every feeling like this I've ever denied. On your way through, you unify it in the thymus, which has a whole other reason for why the thymus is so important. Because for me, it's the gland of innocence, because it corresponds to children and joy and a bunch of other things. But then I'm running my fingers down the backside of the heart, and I'm beginning to feel the pericardium, because for me, the pericardium is a two-walled memory. It has two walls. It has cerebral spinal fluid on the inside, and it basically is filled with sand. The sand is the particulated memory of how I either transmitted towards somebody else something unloving, or I reacted to something unloving that was sent to me, or I attacked myself, as I sometimes do, diminishing, that was really dumb. Silly. That's show me the truth about this feeling and every feeling like this I've ever done. And you just basically touch the heart. Now you've asked for faith to show you that feeling. They're not going to come right there, typically not in that moment, because you're already having a feeling.
Right.
Now will come a series of other events that were connected to that one. And in a short period of time, all kinds of little ones will come, one form or the other. You might stub your toe. You might have a sensation. You might have a strange dream. It will keep coming. If you just do this one thing for a month, you'll see that your way of reacting to anything is that no matter what's around you, either feminine or masculine, it's your opportunity to feel and guide the experience through the divine, through the eye of the needle called truth. And then there's some beautiful, if I might use a verse, which I try not to in most situations, but I know you have a biblical orientation. The crown of the grandparents is the grandchildren. And I would, at another time, like to show how that works as your ancestral roots traveling up your left leg from your mother's side of the family and the right leg from your father's side of the family. And they do this weaving process at the ankles and the knees, and they come up to the coccyx, and they do the same weaving process through the meridians and the glands and the organs. And all the pairs of organs that come from different sides of the family, all the way up to the throat, to the brain, all of this energy moves and is a life force. And in recent times, the last few months, I've begun to see how it connects. And this connection to me is a wonderful opportunity to connect your mother's father, which just happens to be the breath or lung line, your mother's relationship to her father. And people like to think of the organs just as organs, and no, they're actually composed of emotional combinations of memory from the ancestry. All of them there are
On the spiritual level, that's what they're actually is forming them, right?
yes. So that if I have a composite memory held in my soul, it's mirrored down to my body systems to produce symptoms. So every symptom that the body produces is actually a reflection of unresolved truth I have yet to realize.
Well, I call it unresolved stuff. And unresolved stuff is always some kind of disharmony in,
Yes.
like between idea on this side, idea on that side, that that are in conflict inside of us, like we have conflicts outside of us, right?
Yes.
I'm just trying to clarify from that I'm understanding you correctly.
Well, the way I treat this is I honestly try not to understand too fast.
But I mean,
Uh,
I was just trying to mentally going through what you're saying. Okay, go ahead.
wow, you mean my mother's father has a particular effect on me, and my mother's relationship to her father and my grandfather's relationship to her, my mother, has a specific relationship on all of my metabolic system, because the precursor of all metabolic function in the body is breathing. So the breathing link is also related to air, for example, but they're the opposite side of this, what I call number one son, because your number one son of the father is typically more aligned with his mother than his father. And there's very wonderful reasons why, because his father does not have his mother's gene code, he does. So the number one son has a natural ability to be able to touch and open the heart of the mother. But in order to do that, it opens all of her unresolved feelings about men and her father. And this is now going to affect the ability to successfully use the lung function. But there is another lung that we forget about, and it's the skin on the body is a breathing mechanism. And the way that the skin is a container, the lungs are like a container of wings, and there's another container around us. Now, I'm just talking about one grandparent. There are 12 primary ones that have a very powerful influence. So I'm saying, yes, there are molecules that will successfully help people deal with their congestion in the lungs, wet or dry. And those molecules are very important because we should do everything we possibly can to resolve the physical symptoms to help our friends come out of suffering and live longer. Now, there are other issues just above that, which is where a dense layer of the subtle field is connected to the physical body. Now, this connection to the physical body, to the soul, I've experienced as the silver cord. It is a connection from the soul to the physical body, and it's very directly related to your mother's feelings about men, and then your mother's self-image of how she feels. Because if she has a belief about men are terrible, or I'll never have enough, or whatever her religious or emotional belief systems about people, cultures, whatever, you now have that somewhere inside you. And you're not always going to be in touch with them, but they can pop up at different stages of your life, just in one grandfather. Now, one on one side, one on the other side, left hand, first son, right hand, first daughter. Now you have father's mother, the other grandmother, central to the experience. By the way, they're very, very significant. Father's mother represents the bones and represents cell nucleus memory. Now, guess what's in the cell nucleus managed by her? The DNA code. And whatever is in there, I just happen to have a rock sitting next to me, which is, by the way, was from Spain. If I have a dark memory in my cell nucleus, my number one girl survival instinct controlling reproductive urges will go out and find somebody to help me replicate it exactly. The DNA must replicate everything it was given, and it will keep turning them and turning them and turning them and turning them, perfectly bringing to you all of the emotions associated with all the pains that my father's mother might have with her own father or her own mother. And the amount of interaction between the entire family tree is absolutely shocking. Now, somehow or another, I need to be willing to become responsible for becoming aware of God's truth for the divine purpose of me realizing something. And you know the whole story about the sins of the fathers and so on, coming down to the children and so on. They're inside of us. My father's well, my father's hatred of many other people. Part of my problem on my masculine side, my father, well, he hated everyone, especially game wardens, because we used to poach game in the Sierra Nevadas for food, right? But he hated many, many people, Catholics, Protestants, Jews. He hated anybody that was religious about anything, right? All of that stuck inside of me. I have to keep cleaning it until it's gone. God does not remove something that I'm unaware of, unless maybe you're under 6. Then I think it might be possible to be able to remove some things. But I'm urging you to consider anytime any emotion comes up, take it to your heart, clean the backside, clean the front side, say thank you if you're on your way through it, because whatever is coming at you is a miracle and is designed to help you become more aware and to feel and grow.
Well, that's a great exercise to leave people with, as a practical thing to do with what we've just been talking about. And I want to just say, from my own experience, one of the things I've learned is that my reactions are inside of me. They're not in the world around me. So I have the illusion that what's happening in the world around me is causing the stuff inside of me.
Exactly.
The truth of the matter is, it's revealing the stuff inside of me.
Yes.
And therefore it becomes my opportunity, like you said, to, I think, well, encourage people to do what you just said. Show me the truth, this feeling. So, because if I own it, then I can do something with it. But if I'm in denial of it, I can't do anything with it.
And I'm also advocating that the use of prayer through the Holy Spirit will penetrate to the levels to give you the greatest opportunity to see all of it. Because you'll be able to go back to your family tree history and talk about your mother and your father, their relationships to their mother and father. And yeah, you can do some good about stirring that up a bit. But on a divine level, your purpose for doing that is not just to stir and release and whatever. It's to build your capacity to love more. So I urge people to consider that we have great assistance. Later on, we can talk about some requirements that we have to truly examine our participation in all suffering in the world. And when you start to see how we are contributors to other people's suffering by the continuation of our false belief systems and or attitudes or prejudices, we're transmitting to the world.
And I would just say that's because we're all interconnected.
Yes, so, we have attitudes, we're banging them, and it's coming back to bang us.
Right. Well, I think this is a good place to end. And we obviously have a lot of ways we could continue this conversation. So maybe we can get together again and talk about how we can help heal what we're doing and how it's affecting the world, so that we actually can become a vessel for light and change in the world. Yeah.
Thank you abundantly from my heart for giving both of us this opportunity. 2 old men talking about very things.
Yeah, well, I thought it was great. And I honestly, you gave me some inspiration and understanding of what I needed. So something was speaking through you to me today. So I appreciate that. Okay, everybody, thanks again. And thank you for watching this episode of Healthy Conversations. And I'll have links to Denny and his, if you want to get a hold of him, in the links below. Please don't. Okay.
I have another human being I have to like.
Okay. All right. God bless everybody.
Go on. Thank you.
Hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to catch future episodes of Healthy Conversations. Help us educate others by sharing this video, and please feel free to share your own thoughts, comments, and questions below. To learn more, check out the links below.